Hi everyone, in today's video we're going to go through section 5.3. So we're continuing on with module 5 and we're going to go through 5.3. These notes are on page 13. So first we're going to do a quick review of the three forms we have for a linear equation. So the first is slope-intercept form, and hopefully we know by now, recognize that's just y equals mx plus b. And then here we have our m is the slope, and our b is the y-intercept. And we've been graphing and writing these equations for much of this whole year, actually. The key feature here with slope-intercept form is that y is by itself. The second form we have is called point-slope form, and that looks like this. Y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. So just like in slope-intercept form, we're going to have a y and an x in our equation. Our m still stands for slope. And in this case, our x1 and y1 just represent a point. So every time we wrote in point-slope form, we were given a point and a slope. Those x1 and y1 are just the x and y coordinates of the given point. And then the newest form we had was called standard form, and that looks like this. ax plus by equals c. Now in this case, a, b, and c are just numbers, or what we call constants. And then you can see we have our variables x and y. So the key features here are that x and y are together on the same side. And by that we mean the same side of the equal sign. And another key feature, it says no fractions. So that means our values for a, b, and c cannot be fractions. So what we're going to work with today is really changing from one form into the other. So to do that, we're going to need to review some skills. We've worked with these a lot, so nothing should be new here. But the first one we need to talk about is distributing. And we recognize that we have to distribute when we see parentheses. Now, when we're distributing, the operation we're going to be using here is multiplication. So to get rid of those parentheses, I'm going to take the number outside and I'm going to multiply it by both of those terms or both of those things on the inside. So negative 3 times x gives me negative 3x. Then here I'm going to be really careful. I have a negative 3 times a negative 4. That negative times a negative is going to give me a positive 12. Now, sometimes we have to distribute and combine like terms. And when that's the case, we always have to distribute first. So I'm going to make a note that says, do this first. So that means for this problem, for right now, I'm going to ignore the 4. I'm going to go ahead and distribute that positive 2. So I have 2 times x gives me 2x. Now a positive 2 times a negative 5 is going to give me a negative 10. And now I can go ahead and bring down my 4. So now I'm going to go ahead and combine like terms. Now, when we're combining like terms, we're using addition or subtraction, depending on our problem. So here I notice the only thing with an x in it is a 2x, so that can't be combined with anything. But I have a 4 here, and then I have a minus 10. I'm going to be really careful with my signs there. So for this, I'm just going to subtract. So what we would have here is just 4 minus 10. I'm going to type it in exactly how it looks, and I get negative 6. And then I'm going to bring down that plus 2x. Now that's the same as 2x minus 6. Either one would be correct. So let's see how knowing that is going to help us rearrange these equations. So our target here is applying properties of these operations, so just what we did up here, to linear expressions in order to determine equivalence. Remember, if things are equivalent, it means they're equal. So I want to go from one form of a linear equation to another, but still keeping things equal. So for these problems, it says rearrange the equations into slope-intercept form. So we're going to have to be really careful about reading the directions here. We don't want to rearrange it into the wrong form. And just to help myself out, I'm going to make myself a note. That means y equals mx plus b. So really I'm looking to get the y alone. And we've done a lot of this work when we solved literal equations. So hopefully this is pretty familiar. So if I'm going to get y by itself, first I have to move over this x. I'm going to do that by subtracting from both sides. So when I do that, it cancels here. I bring down my negative 2y. And over here, I'm going to have 10 minus x. Now I'm almost done. I just need to divide by a negative 2. And I need to divide everything on this side by a negative 2. So not just the 10, but both parts. So now I have a 10 divided by a negative 2 is a negative 5. Here I have a negative over a negative, and we can think of this as really a negative 1 in front of that x. So negative 1 over negative 2. Now in this case, I don't actually want to divide because I don't want a decimal there. But if I'm not sure, I can check and see if this is simplified. I'm going to get negative 1 over negative 2, and that's going to simplify to a positive 1/2, and I have an x with it. Now, this is okay. We could also write this as 1/2 x minus 5. Those are both equivalent forms. They're also equivalent to this equation, which I should have made a note here. Originally, this was in standard form, and we changed it into slope-intercept. Number 2, actually, they made even easier for us. Again, my goal is to get y by itself, so I need to subtract 3x. So now automatically I get y by itself. Now here, I want to get into the habit of having the x term first. So I'm just going to take this negative 3x. I'm going to write that first. Since this was a positive 12, we're going to make that a plus 12, and we're done. All right, last one here. The nice thing here is that I've got my y by itself. But when I'm looking at this, it looks like it's in point slope form to me. So to get it into slope intercept form, I need to get rid of those parentheses and combine my like terms. So we're going to go ahead and distribute. I get y equals 4x plus 4. And then I have minus 6. So then I know I can do 4x. I can combine my plus 4 and my minus 6. And again, being careful because of those signs, if I go to my calculator, I have 4 minus 6, and I get minus 2. All right, let's take a look at the next page. And just so this doesn't turn into too long of a video, I don't think I'll do all of these problems. All right, now they've changed our goal. Our goal here is to write an equivalent equation, but this time it has to be in standard form. Right, that means ax plus by equals c. So if I'm going to do these, probably the first thing I'm going to do is get x and y on the same side of the equal sign. And once I've done that, I'm probably going to go and try to get rid of any fractions. And we'll talk about how to do that. So let's try one out. So in number 4, I notice that x and y aren't on the same side of the equal sign. So the first thing I'm going to do is subtract this 1/2 x. from both sides. So I can bring that over. So now this is gone. I just have 4 left. I want to put my x first, so I'm going to grab my negative 1/2 x first, and then I've got a positive y, so I'm going to make it plus y. So we've done step 1. X and y are on the same side of the equal sign. I just have fractions now. So here's what we need to do. I need to get rid of this 2 here, this negative 1/2. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to multiply by 2. And I need to do that on both sides. So on the left, that means I'm going to distribute. So 2 times a negative 1/2. I'm going to do on my calculator using my alpha y equals, and I have negative 1/2, and I get negative 1. So I'm going to have negative x, then 2 times y is going to give me plus 2y, and then 4 times 2 equals 8. So now I've met both of my goals. I have x and y on the same side, and I don't have fractions in front of those variables. All right, we'll do one more of these. Let's look at number 5. The nice thing with number 5 is actually x and y are already on the same side of the equal sign. The only problem I have is this fraction here. So to get rid of that fraction, I'm just going to multiply by that denominator. And again, we're going to do that on both sides. Now I distribute. So the first thing I'm going to do is 3 times alpha y equals, and I have 2/3, which is just going to give me 2. So I'm going to have 2x. 3 times 4 is going to give me a plus 12y, and that's equal to 24. Again, I'm going to stop there because now I'm in standard form, and that's what it asked for. All right, we'll leave number 6 for right now, just so this doesn't get too long. Now, the only difference at the bottom here, it says pay attention to which form you're supposed to rearrange the equation into. So make sure you're reading the directions and doing what the problem is asking. So for my first one, it says rearrange into slope-intercept form. Again, I'm going to give myself a little hint. I know that's y equals mx plus b. So my goal here really is to get x by itself, or excuse me, y by itself. If I'm going to get this by itself, I need to get rid of the x first. So I'm going to subtract that from both sides. The reason I put it off to the side here is so I remember that I can't put these two together because they don't both have an x. So now I have negative 4y equals, I'm going to put my x first, so negative x. My 28 was positive, so I'm going to make it a plus 28. Last step is to get y all the way by itself. I'm going to divide by negative 4. That means I have to divide everything on this side by negative 4. So now I get y equals, remember I can treat this like a negative 1. I have negative 1 over negative 4. Negative over negative gives me a positive 1/4 x. 28 divided by negative 4 gives me minus 7. And I've rearranged that into slope-intercept form. Next thing we have to do is standard form. I'm going to go ahead and do 9 because this looks like the one that we didn't do above. Number 5 looks like number 4, so you can use that as an example. So let's look at 9. Let's see. We set up here to go to standard form, we had to get x and y on the same side of the equal sign. But I actually have one additional step here. First, I actually have to simplify this side before I can do anything else. So let's use our distributing and combining like terms. I have 2 times x is 2x. 2 times a negative 7 is negative 14. And then I bring down my plus 4. So I'm going to get y equals 2x. And then again, I'm going to use my calculator, so I'm very careful with my signs. I have negative 14 plus 4 is negative 10. Now I can go ahead and get x and y on the same side. I want to move my x over. I'm going to move that by subtracting it So over here, I'm going to have negative 10. Over here, I'm going to take my negative 2x. My y was positive, so I have plus y. And now I get negative 2x plus y equals a negative 10, and I've rearranged that equation into standard form. So your assignment for today was to just take down those notes. Once you've taken down your complete notes, please take pictures and post them to Classroom so I can mark that assignment complete. And then on Wednesday, your assignment will be to do the Ready, Set, Go. Hope you're all doing well and taking care of yourselves, and I will talk to you soon.